What's up everyone? It's Eric from Late to the Game Outdoors, and today we're talking about bow tuning. Now, if it is on the internet and a way to tune your bow, I have probably tried it in the last couple months because, for one thing, I'm slightly obsessive, but also I've just been trying to do what I think most of us bow hunters are doing pre-season, is trying to get my broadheads and my field points like locked in, hitting in the same place, which sounds easier than it often is. So with hindsight in my favor, I'm gonna go through some of what I learned, some of the mistakes I made along the way, and what I have ultimately come to believe is, at least for me, the simplest, the quickest way to tune my bow. If I was suddenly handed a brand new bow, these are the steps I would walk through. And maybe it helps you out. Maybe it demystifies some of it, because there's a lot of information out there. And frankly, there's several ways you could skin this cat. This is not going to be, here's the only way to tune your bow. There are lots of ways to do this. Here's what has worked best for me. The first thing that I must say before you start moving rests and messing with stuff is to make sure your arrows, your bow, that whole setup is set up properly and you're shooting the right stuff. I started this process with underspined arrows, which aren't going to tune well. Then I overcorrected and went to overspined arrows, which also aren't going to tune well. And so finally landed right where I should be, where I should have listened to the bow tech and the back of the box to begin with the right spine, and those suckers tuned right up. So make sure your arrows are good, make sure your draw length is set. This is going to involve a bow shop for most of you, but that's okay, because the first step, well, I just said that was the first step. So the second step is going to involve a bow shop for most of us. And that's to start with paper. All right, that's not rocket science. You've heard that everywhere. If you've ever bought a bow or go in to have it set up, they probably had you shoot through paper. Paper is not like, oh, okay, I got a bullet hole through paper. Now I'm good to go. Let me strap a broadhead on there and go hunting. But it at least puts you in the ballpark. It makes it so you're not starting from absolutely nothing. And your bow shop should do this. If they don't, maybe think about a different bow shop. Make sure you're shooting through the paper, okay? It's not enough for your bow tech to adjust some stuff, go back, send an arrow through, say, yep, you're dialed, here you go, because the technique, the grip, the way he holds and releases that bow is gonna be different than the way you do it. And you might be doing some stuff that puts different torque on it or just makes the arrow fly differently, and you're gonna be chasing your tail. That being said, or on that note, don't rule yourself out as part of the problem. All right, that's not fun. We would love to just blame our gear, because obviously we are all the best archers, but maybe some bad habits, some bad techniques, something has crept in over the years and caused problems. When I first started messing with this and I was having serious arrow flight issues, I went down to my bow shop and he was adjusting stuff and messing with things, and just we couldn't get this paper, this bad tear to come out. And sort of, not in frustration, but out of curiosity, he just said, hold on, let me try something. He took my bow, the same arrow, set up, sent it through paper, perfectly clean bullet hole. So it was on me. I was gripping the bow in a way that I had started doing a few years ago, which actually helped back then, but somehow along the way I had shifted some things, adjusted some stuff, so now I was torquing the bow hardcore. So took care of that, took care of a few other things, got myself solidly bullet holing through, bullet holing? We can make it a verb. Got myself finally shooting a bullet hole through paper, so now I was ready to try other tuning methods. Once you're nice and clean through paper, now you have the choice of which option do you want to take. Some of the most popular ones out there, the ones that I've tried, there's bare shaft tuning, where you shoot a fletched arrow with a field point and a bare shaft with a field point. Never shoot a bare shaft with a broadhead. That's a bad idea. And you try to get those two to lock in right together at about 20 yards. If you don't want to cut the fletchings off an arrow or mess with bare shaft tuning, there's a couple different versions of walk back tuning you can try. I think the old school one is the tape a vertical line down your target, and then using the same pin and the same point of aim, you shoot at 20 and you walk back to 30 and 40 and to 50, and you get this descending line of arrows. And if they start to wander off in one direction or the other, the further back you get, you start to move the rest in minute little adjustments to try to bring that Y-axis back in line. I look like the Pope blessing you. The other version of that is modified walkback tuning or French tuning. And I think people just invented the term modified walkback because they didn't want to say French. But that's where you take your 50 pin and you lock it in on the target at like 3 to 5 yards, just super close, get it laser straight, especially considering left to right movements, okay? Because vertical is gonna be a little bit off unless you spend a lot of time really sighting in and figuring out where in that 3 to 5 yard range your 50 pin hits where it should at 50. But get that locked in, then push the block back to 50 and send a couple arrows. And if you can dial that in to where you're hitting dead on where you were at 3 to 5 yards, then you should be pretty good. As far as how to make the adjustments or which direction to move, that's just one thing you have to keep in mind, especially if you're new to bow tuning, that it's different than a bow sight. So when you're messing with your sight and your pins, you're always chasing the arrow, right? So if you missed a little bit high, you move the sight or the pin up. You go the direction it went, and that compensates and actually brings it back to where you want it to be. For the rest, when you're tuning your bow, you actually, it flips. You have to move it the direction you want the arrow to come. So if you do your modified walkback and at 50 yards you're missing a couple inches left, then you want to make tiny, tiny micro adjustments, like 32nd of an inch, maybe even less. Just barely nudge it over one step at a time until it a little goes a long way. But you want to move the rest the direction you want the arrow to go. So you miss a little bit left, you've got to move that rest just barely right and see where you're at, and keep creeping it in until you get where you want. Same with elevation. If you are having consistently high misses with your broadheads, then you actually bring that rest down just a hair. So when you get your modified walk back all dialed in, or your bear shaft if you choose to, but having messed with both, I think the modified broadhead is a little bit simpler, a little bit quicker, and it prevents me having to cut the fletchings off an arrow and refletch it and mess with all that. So once that's pretty dialed, now it's time to test it with a broadhead. And so I take one broadhead. I just have one in the quiver right now with a broadhead. And this year I'm shooting the Vantage Point Archery 100 grain vented 2-blade. I've been loving this thing. Now that the bow is tuned and cooperating, it's terrific. But send that at 50 yards, then send 2 field points-ish. You just want somewhat of a group. Always send your broadhead first, because if you send a broadhead followed up on some other arrows that are already in there, you're just asking to cut fletchings, break arrows, or damage stuff. So send your broadhead, send your field points, see if you're hitting in there together. And if you're not, then I start making even smaller micro adjustments to bring it in where I want it to be. But if you've done the modified walk back, you should be pretty close already. So tiny little adjustments, get it going great. And then after that, like once that's pretty good, I like to just stretch it out to the maximum end of my range. So I shoot a fixed sight. I know that's not trendy or cool, but I'm a big fan of having as few things that can go wrong or malfunction as possible. And I've just heard way too many stories of guys who totally miss an animal and trying to figure out what happened, they look down and their sight tape is all adjusted wrong. So I just wanted something I could lock in, and I've got it set from 30 all the way to 70. So if my broadheads and field points are pretty locked at 50, head back out to 70, because any inconsistencies, any little issues, obviously the further out you get, the more magnified they're gonna be. So take it out to 70, make it maybe the most minor of adjustments if it's missing a little bit one way or the other. And at that point, if I get it pretty locked and dialed all the way out at 70, man, there's nothing left to worry about. So enough talking, let's see how some of this goes. Money. Okay, and this is why you send groups, not just a single arrow. I knew, you know how you know you've made not a perfect shot? As soon as this one released, I knew. I punched the trigger a little bit, it happens. I'm working on it. These two both felt great. And the fact that they are just locked in right on this y-axis, man, I'm tuned. Which is not super helpful for you, but I wasn't filming this back when I was still struggling with it. So the first time I did this, came out here at 50 yards and I was probably about 3 inches to the left consistently. So just took that rest, made tiny little micro adjustments to the right, the direction that I want the arrow to travel, until back at 3 to 5 yards, it's dead on money. 50 yards, dead on right where I want it. Next step is to grab a broadhead and send it and a couple more arrows and see where they're hitting. Okay. That last one was punched, I could tell. All right, so broadhead, first field point that felt good. Second field point that felt pretty punched, but still all in a 5-inch group at 50 yards, which is pretty close. I mean, it missed barely to the left, well within the bounds of shooter error. So what I'm gonna do is take these back. I'm gonna swap the broadhead to a different arrow, something I try to do just to make sure you'll notice inconsistencies, or, you know, I haven't done it yet because I just made up these arrows, but I should. Numbering the fletchings and kind of keeping track of which arrows are flying truest with broadhead, so those can be first up in the quiver. But this is not bad, this is promising. If I shoot another group or two and it keeps missing left, then we'll reevaluate. I'm okay with that. Broadhead's over here, still slightly to the left. But, like, see the group size in here? To confirm that, I'm actually gonna push the blocks back to 70, send the same group, and see what happens. Because if the broadhead is always to the left, it's gonna get further to the left, and then I'll make just a tiny little rest adjustment, see what happens. All right, out at 70 yards, like I said earlier, I switched to the side of the block with the little blue square on it. If I can put a broadhead and 2 field points in that general area, I'm gonna be real happy. Not gonna change a thing. That was good. A little high. All right, let's go see that. All right, I'll take that. Broadhead right here. The windage is like dead on. These two like right in the box. This one, like, it hit tape. It's half in the tape. At 70 yards, I'll give that to myself. Dang, I'm tuned. I'm sorry, I was hoping to show you more like adjustments and stuff, but apparently I'm just too good. I'm kidding, sorry. If you're new to the channel, you don't know that's my style. I don't think that about myself at all. I always assume the problem is me until I can figure out some reason that it's not. All right, maybe that helps, maybe it doesn't. If you're a newer archer and you haven't ever touched your rest to adjust it, because that seems terrifying, and like they set it up at the bow shop, what if I mess it up? Listen, I've been there, I was there for years. And you don't want to be the guy who's just down. It would take hours and hours with a bow tech to just keep shooting and tweaking and adjusting. And honestly, they'll do that. It'll cost you, but they would happily do it for you. But I would much rather be able to do some of this myself, to at least go to a bow shop, get it close, get it going through paper, and then come out here and have confidence to make a few minor tweaks to get everything flying and hitting right where I want it. So give this a shot. And while you're adjusting stuff, like if things are flying pretty well, make some marks with like pencil or chalk or something that can be erased later if you want, but mark where it is so that if you start tweaking some stuff and it somehow gets worse, okay, you can always go right back to where you had it and start from there again. But don't be afraid to move a couple things and see what it does for your arrow flight. I know you unfortunately didn't get to see much of it because I did so much of this troubleshooting just trying to get things dialed. But when I first did the walk back, I had to bump it in a few yards, got it dialed, then started throwing broadheads. They actually still hit just a little bit left. And so I made one more tiny tweak on that rest. And now I'm out to 70, just locked in, ready to go. So if this was helpful, please like, subscribe, hit the little notification button. I've got a few more videos that'll be coming out real soon. I want to talk some more about these broadheads and some different weight configurations and options there. And season's upon us, so some hunting film should be dropping real soon because I have a busy and awesome fall plan. So hopefully we'll see some cool stuff and some animals hit the ground. Thank you guys so much for watching, and for now, just shoot straight, get yourself dialed because, man, season is upon us.